It was one of those late spring mornings in Willow Creek, where the air hung thick with the scent of blooming lilacs and the promise of summer lingered just out of reach. The sun spilled golden across the manicured lawns of the suburban enclave, glinting off the perfectly aligned mailboxes and freshly painted fences. For 16-year-old Riley Carter, it was the kind of day she'd been a VY not quiet Saturday to slip out of the house with her scruffy mutt, Daisy, and breathe without the weight of her mother's worried eyes or the neighbor's sidelong glances. She tugged her faded denim jacket tight, the collar brushing against the jagged scar that stretched from her jaw to her Shadir souvenir from the tumor they'd carved out of her 2 years ago. It was a battle-she'd won, but the mark remained, pink and defiant, a story she didn't choose to tell but couldn't hide. Riley wasn't looking for attention. She just wanted normalcy a walk around the block, Daisy's leash loose in her hand, the rhythm of her sneakers on the pavement. She'd made it 3 houses down when the peace shattered, the sharp clack of a gate swinging open cut through the morning stillness, followed by the clipped, unmistakable voice of Margaret Maggie Reynolds, the HOA president who ruled Willow Creek like it was her personal fiefdom. Maggie was a VY shown of suburban perfection, crisp linen capris, a pastel cardigan, auburn hair swept into a flawless chignon. Her smile was tight, practiced, the kind that never reached her eyes. "Riley, dear," she called, her tone dripping with honeyed venom. "A quick word." Riley stopped short, Daisy whining softly at her side. She turned, squinting against the sun, and saw Maggie striding toward her with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no. The woman's gaze locked onto Riley's scar like a heat-seeking missile, her lips pursing as if she'd just bitten into something sour. "You know," Maggie began, crossing her arms, "we've had some concerns raised recently. Willow Creek prides itself on a certain image, a standard of beauty and order. And that," she flicked a manicured finger toward Riley's neck, "well, it's unsettling. We have young families here, impressionable kids. It's not exactly the kind of thing people want to see on their morning strolls. Maybe a scarf? Or, better yet, stick to your backyard until it fades." Riley's stomach twisted. The words landed like a punch, each syllable sharp and deliberate. She opened her mouth to respond, but nothing came out, just a dry, choking silence. Maggie didn't wait for a reply. She pivoted on her heel, her gate slamming shut behind her with a clang that echoed down the street. Riley stood frozen, Daisy nudging her leg as if to say, "Let's go." But her feet wouldn't move. The heat rising in her cheeks wasn't shame, it was something hotter, something she couldn't name yet. She yanked her hood up, the fabric scraping against her scar, and trudged home, the morning's softness gone. Back at the Carter house, Nora Carter knew something was off the moment Riley walked in. It was the way her daughter's shoulders slumped, the way she dropped Daisy's leash onto the floor instead of hanging it up. Nora set down her coffee mug, the ceramic clinking softly against the counter. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice gentle but firm, the tone of a woman who'd spent years learning to read her daughter's silences. Riley shrugged, avoiding her mother's gaze. "Nothing. Just HOA crap. It's fine." But the lie was thin, and Nora caught the tremor in her hands as she zipped her jacket all the way up, hiding the scar like it was a secret she'd been caught with. Riley disappeared upstairs without another word, Leah VYing Nora staring at the empty doorway. It wasn't until later that evening, when the house had settled into a heavy quiet, that Nora got the truth. Not from Riley. She retreated to her room, the door shut tight, but from a text that buzzed her phone. It was from Jen Harper, a soft-spoken widow who lived 2 doors down. "Heard Maggie going off on Riley this morning. Security cam caught it. You need to see this." Attached was a grainy VY Deo clip. Maggie's finger jabbing toward Riley's neck, her mouth MOVYing in that sanctimonious snarl, Riley shrinking under the weight of it all. Nora watched it twice, her grip tightening on the phone until her knuckles ached. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She sat at the kitchen table, the glow of her laptop screen casting shadows across her face, and let the anger simmer. Nora wasn't new to Maggie's tyranny. Had been the snide letters about their slightly overgrown hedges, the fines for a chipped fence post during Riley's chemo months, The whispered complaints about that sick girl dragging down property values. But this was a line crossed in bold, ugly ink. Maggie had taken a child who'd clawed her way back from death and told her she didn't belong in the light. Nora stood, her chair scraping the floor, and climbed the stairs to Riley's room. The door was cracked open, just enough to see her daughter curled under a blanket, Daisy sprawled beside her. She leaned down, brushing a kiss across Riley's forehead, and whispered, "You're enough." Riley didn't stir, but Nora felt the words settle into the air like a promise. Back downstairs, she opened her laptop again, her fingers hovering over the keys. 3 years ago, she'd walked away from her law career to be Riley's anchor through the cancer storm. Now, it was time to pick up the tools she'd set down, not just for Riley, but for every kid who'd ever been made to feel small by someone like Maggie Reynolds. Riley didn't bounce back. She folded inward, a flower closing against the frost. The walks with Daisy stopped. She stopped sitting on the porch to sketch the birds that flocked to their feeder. She started wearing oversized sweatshirts. Even as the temperatures climbed into the 80s, the hoods pulled low over her face. When Nora asked if she was okay, Riley's answers were clipped, "I'm fine, it's no big deal," but her eyes told a different story. They were dull, distant, the spark that had carried her through hospital stays and endless 4 drips snuffed out by a single conversation. Nora watched it happen, helpless and furious. She remembered the Riley who'd once shaved her head before the chemo could take her hair, who'd drawn smiley faces on her 4 bags with a Sharpie, who'd told the doctor she'd beat cancer just to spite it. That girl was gone, replaced by a shadow who flinched at her own reflection. One night, Nora found her in the bathroom, staring at the mirror with a pair of scissors in her hand, as if she could cut the scar away. "It's not you," Nora said, easing the scissors from her grip. Riley didn't reply, just sank into her mother's arms and stayed there, silent. The breaking point came later that week. Nora had stepped out to grab groceries, Leah VYing Riley home with Daisy. When she returned, she found her daughter sitting on the couch, a thick wool scarf wrapped around her neck despite the heat, her face pale and sweaty. "Riley, honey, you're burning up," Nora said, reaching for the scarf. Riley pulled away, clutching it tighter. "I like it," she muttered. "It's comforting." Nora's heart cracked. She didn't push, didn't argue. She just nodded and sat beside her, the silence stretching between them like a tightrope. That night, after Riley had gone to bed, Nora locked herself in the bathroom, turned the shower on full blast, and let the scalding water drown out the sob that tore from her throat. It wasn't just Maggie. It was everything ex-husband who'd bailed when Riley's diagnosis hit. The endless nights of holding her daughter through fevers and nosebleeds. The way the world kept spinning while they fought to serve VYV. And now this. A woman with a clipboard and a superiority complex had taken Riley's fragile VY Tory and crushed it under her heel. When the tears stopped, Nora stepped out, wrapped herself in a towel, and caught her reflection in the steamed-up mirror. She barely recognized the woman's staring back-tired eyes, a jaw set hard from too many battles. But beneath the exhaustion, something flickered. Resolve. She pulled on a faded t-shirt, padded barefoot to the kitchen, and opened her laptop. Her old law firm credentials still worked, the files from her past life still waiting. She started typing emotion, a plan, a weapon. This wasn't just about Maggie anymore. It was about Riley, about every scar that deserved to be seen, about a mother who'd walked through fire and wasn't about to let it burn her daughter down. The next HOA meeting was a sterile of fair fluorescent lights buzzing in the community center, rows of metal chairs, a faint smell of bleach lingering in the air. Maggie sat at the front, her usual throne, clipboard in hand, her posture radiating control. The room was half full, neighbors shifting uncomfortably in their seats, used to her reign. But tonight, something felt off. When Nora walked in, heads turned. She wasn't in her usual jeans and sneakers. She wore a tailored black blazer, her hair pulled back, a leather briefcase slung over her shoulder. She didn't sit in the back like always. She took a spot in the front row, her gaze locked on Maggie. Maggie's eyes narrowed, but she didn't falter. "Let's begin," she said, her voice crisp. The agenda rolled out mailbox, paint codes, lawn maintenance, fines until Nora stood, cutting through the monotony like a blade. "I'd like to add an item," she said, her tone calm but unyielding. She opened her briefcase and pulled out a stack of papers, letting them thud onto the table beside her. Discriminatory harassment by an HOA officer in violation of state CIVYL rights laws and community bylaws. The room went still. Maggie's pen froze mid-scribble. "That's not," she started, but Nora pressed on. "I have EVY Denke," she said, lifting a photo as still from Jen's security footage. Maggie's finger aimed at Riley's scar like a loaded gun. Verbal attacks on a minor. Written complaints targeting her medical condition. She slid a letter across the table. Maggie's looping handwriting unmistakable. "Please keep disfigured residents out of sight. It's distressing to the community." "And this," Nora added, holding up a USB drive, "contains 8 VY clips and 4 signed witness statements corroborating a pattern of BHVY, or..." A ripple of whispers spread through the crowd. Maggie's face tightened, her authority slipping. "This is absurd," she snapped. "Out of order." Nora didn't blink. "It's in order now." Then, from the back, a voice broke through. Tim Grayson, a burly mechanic who rarely spoke at meetings. "She fined me last year because my daughter's wheelchair scuffed the sidewalk. Called it unsightly." A woman near the door nodded. "She told me my son's hearing aid was distracting at the pool." One by one, the stories poured out, a dam breaking after years of silence. Maggie's protests drowned in the tide. No vote was taken that night, but the shift was seismic. For the first time, Maggie didn't command the room, she shrank in it. Nora filed the lawsuit 3 weeks later, not for petty revenge, but for something bigger: accountability. She sued for discrimination, emotional distress, and CIVYL rights violations, citing state and federal housing laws. Maggie was served on a rainy Thursday morning, her husband fumbling with the envelope while she stood behind him, pale and silent. The first hearing was set for mid-June. Nora prepared alone, nights spent poring over case law in the dim light of her kitchen. She didn't need a firm. She had her degree, her experience, and a fire that burned hotter than any courtroom spotlight. The day arrived, and the gallery filled neighbors, reporters, even Riley's old art teacher, Mrs. Lynn, who'd always said Riley's sketches were quietly fierce. Maggie swept in late, her beige trench coat pristine, her expression a mask of indignation. But when she saw Nora at the plaintiff's table in a judge's robe approved for pro-hack VYC status, her composure cracked. "Your Honor," Nora began, her voice steady, "this case is about a pattern of cruelty masked as community standards. The defendant, Margaret Reynolds, targeted my daughter, a cancer survivor, with statements like this." She held up the letter, reading aloud, "Disfigured residents disrupt our aesthetic." She suggested Riley hide her scar, as if Sir V.Y. Val is something to be ashamed of. The courtroom simmered. Maggie's lawyer objected something about relevance, but the judge dismissed it with a flick of his hand. Nora laid out the EVY Denke, the VY Deos, the notes, the witnesses. Maggie squirmed, her poise unraveling with every exhibit. The verdict came swiftly. Maggie was fined due law $30,000, ordered to resign from the HOA, and mandated to issue a public apology. The gavel fell, and the room exhaled. But the real VY Tory came the next day, when Riley stepped out Cedino's scarf. No hood and found the street lined with neighbors holding signs. "You're our hero, scars are strength." She cried, not from shame, but from something lighter, something new. Maggie didn't take it lying down. A month later, a countersuit landed in Nora's mailbox: defamation, emotional distress, loss of standing. Nora laughed, a sharp, incredulous sound, and showed it to Riley. "She's suing us for her own mess?" Riley said, grinning. "Let's fight her again." The second trial was shorter, sharper. Nora dismantled Maggie's claims with surgical precision, her EVY Denke, a wall the defense couldn't breach. The jury dismissed the suit in under 2 hours, tacking on legal fees for good measure. Maggie left the courthouse diminished, a shadow of the tyrant she'd been. Willow Creek changed after that. A new HOA president, a laid-back carpenter named Dan, scrapped Maggie's petty rules. Kids played freely, yards bloomed with wildflowers, and Riley danced again. First at her room, then at the studio. Nora opened a small legal office, taking on cases for neighbors tired of petty tyrants. And Riley? She stood in front of her class one day, holding up a scarf she'd once worn like armor. "This isn't weakness," she said, tracing her scar. "This is me." And in that moment, the room didn't just hear her, it saw her, scars and all, blazing with life. If you were the one in this story, how would you react? Would you stand up and fight back, or accept the unreasonable pressure and control from the HOA? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video with more people. Your small action gives us the motivation to keep bringing you more intense and engaging stories. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.